Welcome to another episode of the PFF NFL show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here, breaking down every single team in the NFC North in their own in-depth preview. Dalton, we did the AFC North on Monday. Now we're doing the NFC North today. It's probably maybe the best division in football right now. You have three teams that were playoff teams last year, and the Bears are hoping to make the playoffs this year too. So it's going to be really fun to break it all down today.
If it's not the best division in football, I think it might be the most wide open. I think this division, all four teams have a chance to win it. Right, you've got four dynamic offenses, and obviously you mentioned the Bears. What the Bears are trying to build with Ben Johnson and all those new pieces. The other three making the postseason last year, and even a team like the Green Bay Packers looking for something of a bounce back year despite making the playoffs, right? It feels like last year they didn't take things as far as they wanted to, and they had a lot of difficulty. So this is a wide open division. I know the Lions have been running it for the last couple of years, but it feels like it's tighter than it's been over the last few years.
Yeah, we'll break it out down in just a second. If it's not the best division in football, the best sale is ending very, very soon. In fact, it's the last day today for PFF Plus, 33% off, $40 off right now. Today is the final day of that sale. So use the code Early Bird at checkout to get the best fantasy tools on the planet, the best betting tools on the planet, of course, data and insights on every single player and team in the NFL and college football, the same data that all 32 teams use and every single FBS team uses as well. It's all available to you guys for $80 a year. That's 33% off the full price. Again, today is the final day of our sale, so take advantage of it right now using code EARLYBIRD at subscribe.pff.com. All right, start off this NFC North preview with the Chicago Bears. And Dalton, this is a team that has missed the playoffs 4 years in a row now. So Matt Eberflus was let go as the head coach, and they brought in Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, who's been like the hottest coaching candidate for the last couple years now. He will now be the new head coach in Chicago with Caleb Williams in year 2 of Caleb Williams too. Let's look at what they did this offseason. The Bears got a B+ for the NFL draft this offseason, getting guys like Colson Loveland and Luther Burden III on that offense. And then also we gave them an A- for free agency too, because they really rebuilt that offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right now when you look at this team, it's projected to be the biggest strength. Now they've got three new pieces in Drew Dalman at center, Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson at guard. Got two of those guys via trades and Dalman in free agency. And I think now when you look at this team, it at least on paper could be a top 5 offensive line in the league. The front 5 of Jones, Thuney, Dalman, Jackson, and Darnell Wright at right tackle, that could be a dominant unit. And we know that's Ben Johnson's vision, right? It's the same vision they had in Detroit when they had the best offensive line in football for the last 3 years. You had a dominant offensive line. They could run block. They could get heavy in the play action game with their passing game. They were solid in pass protection. So I think when Ben Johnson came in this offseason and he wanted to build this team in his vision, it started in the trenches. It made a couple of defensive line acquisitions, obviously, also. But this offensive line, he wants it to be the heartbeat of this football team, just like it was in Detroit. And I think he's gone a long way towards making that happen.
Yeah, it's our number 4 offensive line in football heading into the 2025 season, and really it was probably a bottom 10 at least offensive line last year, but then adding those 3 interior offensive linemen to already 2 solid tackles they have there too makes it one of the best O-lines in football. The one weakness really on this offense, I will say, is probably running back. They had a need at running back in free agency and the draft last year. Didn't do much to help that out. They drafted Kyle Monungai in the 7th round, who I thought could have been taken higher than the 7th round of the draft, but probably he's still a day 3 pick at best. So they're only 26th in rushing grade last year, and they were last in yards after contact per attempt. So DeAndre Swift's still there. Roschon Johnson is still there too. And maybe with a better offensive line in front of them, they'll be better next year, because we see all time and time again that offensive line is so critical for how good a team's run game is. And Chicago's wasn't very good last year, but now it's a top 5 offensive line in football. So maybe this year will be better. But I still think running back is a need on this team. And I think for a lot of Bears fans, they'll be watching a lot of Notre Dame football games this year with Jeremiah Love as potentially the only first-round running back in the 2026 NFL draft. I could see him being the final piece for Ben Johnson and his offense. That's not happening until next April, Dalton. So I think this year running back is still kind of a problem for Chicago.
Yeah, no, and Swift had his most efficient season in his last year in Detroit under Ben Johnson. You've got Roschon Johnson. You've got Kyle Monungai, like you mentioned. I think it is going to be a rotation, and the hot hand is going to get reps. But I think it's going to start out with the veteran Swift. And look, the modern theory for the most part, outside of a few special running backs, has been, look, build the offensive line, and you could put a lot of running backs back there, and they could produce at least the league average level. That's what they're hoping for. And I do think Ben Johnson got it right when it comes to building the offensive line first. I just expected them maybe to take it back maybe a little earlier in the draft in the 7th round. But if they like Monangai and they like him in that rotation, then so be it, along with Swift and Johnson.
Definitely. So tell me more about Caleb Williams, who was relatively disappointing as a rookie. But again, it wasn't a great situation for him last year, either with the coaching or the offensive line in front of him. So what should we expect in year 2 from him under Ben Johnson?
So, I mean, Caleb Williams was the victim last year of being, was it the 3rd or 4th straight quarterback to walk into a Bears situation that essentially had a lame duck coach, and they wound up firing him after their first year, right? So I think when you look at Caleb Williams last year, was not great play calling. The accuracy was shaky. And the thing I was worried about most when he was coming out of USC was, is he going to throw the ball on time at the NFL level? We know him to be one of the best improvisers. He's one of the best improvisers we've ever seen in college football, but you can't improvise your way through an entire season, right? So I think the big thing for me with Caleb is learning to throw the football on time. How long will it take him to adjust to Ben Johnson's system? Last year, Max, out of 41 qualified quarterbacks, when throwing in rhythm, Caleb Williams was 32nd in passing grade, right? So it's just that part of it. Now, his turnover-worthy play rate wasn't too bad, but that's also because there were moments where the misses were so bad we couldn't even chart him as turnover-worthy plays. So he's got to get better in rhythm. Ben Johnson's even said as much. There are things in this offense, certain checks, and even playing under center that he just hasn't done as much throughout his entire life. There's things in this offense he hasn't done in his entire career, high school, college, NFL, wherever. So it's going to be kind of a new learning curve. I don't want to say it's a second rookie season, but in this offense is going to be so much to learn, and the crucial part for the Bears season is getting him to play on time and just making throws on time.
Definitely. I can't wait to watch him in year 2 under Ben Johnson, who's a very creative offensive coordinator, and he was very creative with Jared Goff, who's not a very creative quarterback outside his structure. Who knows what it looks like this year with Caleb Williams, who is, based off college tape at least, is excellent. Outside of structure, too. The offensive player spot, we could have gone with a number of guys here. Honestly, Joe Thuney is one of the best guards in football, our number 2 guard in the league. Drew Dalton, our number 5 center in the league as well. And Dalton's a perfect fit in that outside zone heavy scheme that Ben Johnson runs. I wanted to talk about an underrated player on this offensive line, though. That is Darnell Wright, who is quickly becoming one of the better right tackles in football. He had a 79.3 PFF grade last year. The only right tackles in the NFL with a better PFF grade than him were Penei Sewell, Lane Johnson, and Zach Tom. Those are 3 outstanding right tackles that we have in football, and Darnell Wright was only behind those 3 right there. He was very good as a zone blocker, too, an 89.9 zone blocking grade. That was 7th among all tackles in the league last year. Still a very, very young player as well. I think Darnell Wright, like I said, is becoming one of the star right tackles that we have in football right now. And in another year here, as a young player, he could emerge as one of the better overall tackles in the league.
Absolutely. He was the Bears' highest graded offensive player last year. He's been incredibly durable through his first 2 seasons, playing well over 1,000 snaps. And that last part that you mentioned about the zone blocking, it's something I've talked about with Drew Dalton at center, especially the athleticism on this offensive line. If Ben Johnson's going to run outside zone at a top 5 rate like he did in Detroit, this is going to be a lot of fun when it comes to running the football, no matter who's back there in the backfield, because they're going to have open lanes to work with. I think Darnell Wright is absolutely a star in the making, just to be mentioned in the conversation with those other guys that you named ahead of him. He's well on his way to stardom, and I think he's just as important a piece as all of those acquisitions they made up front.
A guy who's already a star in the NFL, though, Dalton, is Jalen Johnson, who's, according to us, a top 5 corner in football right now.
Absolutely. The Bears' secondary, their coverage unit, has really been the best part of their defense the last couple of years, and that's because Jalen Johnson's one of the best cornerbacks in football. There was a slight drop-off last year from an incredible 2023, but he's still the 2nd highest graded corner in the entire NFL behind Trent McDuffie over the last 2 seasons. Jalen Johnson at corner, he's one of those guys that allows you to do whatever you want to do on defense, and I think Dennis Allen is going to be much more aggressive, playing a lot more man coverage, blitzing a lot more than Matt Eberflus did under the previous defense. So you look at what Jalen Johnson allows you to do in the secondary and how much better he makes your entire defense because of that ability to play one-on-one. He's really the cornerstone of their secondary.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of him. He's been an outstanding player ever since his rookie year, honestly, too. So Big fan of him and a big fan of their first-round pick, too, the number 10 overall pick. That was Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, who's the rookie to watch here for Chicago. Bears tight ends last year were 30th in receiving grade, so the third worst receiving grade among all tight ends last year. And Colston Loveland over the last couple of years is the fourth best receiving grade with a 90.8 receiving grade at Michigan. And really in 2024, it wasn't a very good situation for him at Michigan. He was really the only offensive player worth game planning for opposing defenses, and he was still very, very good last year for the Wolverines. And I think he and that Ben Johnson scheme alongside Cole Kmet too, who's still in that offense, I think a lot of 12 personnel you could see next year in Chicago. And I think Colston Loveland, again, it wasn't one of the names that was talked about for Chicago like running back or edge rusher too, but I think Colston Loveland will be a very fun player for Caleb Williams to play with this offense.
Yeah, any of the questions about them taking Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren, who went 14th to the Colts, I think it's a matter of fit, right? Cole Kmet's an old school traditional tight end who can play inline. Colston Loveland fits right in. He played in a lot of 12 personnel at Michigan, so he's used to kind of this kind of flex role, right, where he can play in the slot, he can play outside, he can play inline with Kmet. I think when it comes to Loveland and his versatility and what he adds to this team receiving-wise, their tight ends had the third worst receiving grade in the NFL last season. This is just the type of player they were looking for. Time will tell if Loveland or Warren is the better player, but I think when it comes to the style that Loveland plays with, this is what Ben Johnson preferred, and I think it's a fantastic pick. He's a seamless fit.
I can't wait to watch him next year. The best bet of the year from our betting guru, Ben Lindsay, is Rome Odunze to have over 1,000 receiving yards in 2025 in his second year. You can get it for plus 225 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. His reasoning is Ben Johnson recently said that Rome Odunze fits the prototypical X-receiver mold, and Ben's really expecting a year two leap from him in what should be a more efficient passing offense. We are big fans of Rome Odunze last year. He was one of the 10 best prospects in the 2024 draft. He had over 700 receiving yards as a rookie last year, and we think he should go over 1,000 receiving yards in his second season.
Yeah, over 700 yards and was on the field all the time. And think about all the difficulties that this team had throwing the football last year. There were times, especially Odunze was kind of the victim of the lack of rhythm in the offense and the lack of accuracy from Caleb Williams. And it really centers around Caleb Williams, right? If he's a lot better, then Odunze's numbers are going to be a lot better. So at plus 220, I don't hate that at all because of how talented we know Odunze is. And I know they have DJ Moore there right now, but Odunze is expected to be their number one wide receiver of the future. If that starts this year, that's a very attainable number.
Definitely. All right, so the Bears win total is set right now by DraftKings at about 8.5 right now. Over 8.5 plus 115, under is minus 135. Do you think they go over or under, and what's the bottom line for this team, and do you think this is potentially a playoff team in the NFC North?
I remember it being that same number last year, and I was hard on the under. I was very much like they haven't proven anything yet. This is a much closer one because, I mean, there's several factors in it. One is just straight up Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. How does that sync up? Two, it is an incredibly hard division. We're about to talk about the other three teams, and they all made the playoffs last year, and they're not getting a whole lot worse, right? The over-under pick is tough for me. They do have the potential, though. They can make the playoffs. I've said it. I think this is the most wide-open division where, more than any other, all four teams have a chance to win it. If Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, if they get the chemistry going early and Williams is a lot better throwing on time, this is a potentially dynamic offense. You've got two solid tight ends. You've got three solid receivers. You've got a top-5 offensive line. You've got a defense that, to me, it's probably not an elite unit, but there's enough players at all three levels that they can support this offense. So I will even tell you that the ceiling is that they could win this division. They just have the largest gap to make up, especially when it comes to their quarterback improving from last year. I think it's a very wide range of outcomes. I was not optimistic on the Bears going into last year. This year, they're better coached. They have a better offensive line. I think there's a lot more potential for them to be in this postseason race.
Yeah, better coach, better offensive line, more weapons to play with for Caleb Williams, too, with Luther Burden and Colston Loveland coming in through the draft, too. I think I'm going to say this is going to be about an 8 or 9 win team. I'll probably say 9 and 8. I'll say maybe not make the playoffs in 2025, but if Caleb Williams can live up to the number 1 overall pick hype he had coming out of USC a couple years ago, and we've seen time and time again, rookie years for quarterbacks are usually a struggle. And then year 2, when they get more comfortable, is when they make a jump. If we see that kind of jump for Caleb Williams in year 2, this absolutely could be a playoff team because the supporting cast room in Chicago is much, much better than what it was in his rookie year. So I think, that you could see that Chicago surprise some people, make the playoffs next year. So I'll say about a 9-8 team right now.
I think the one thing that needs to be said, because I know there's going to be playoff expectations this year in Chicago, they don't have to make the playoffs for this necessarily to be considered a successful year. Obviously, you would like to, and the division's super competitive, and you'd like to make it over the Vikings or the Packers or whoever. But I think it's this 50-50. They're not a developmental team because they have a lot of talent, but also it's really a year where you want to see Caleb Williams look like the franchise guy. It's almost the same expectation as last year's. We want to see him look like a franchise quarterback. He didn't look like that for a lot of last year. If he can do that this year, even if they just get squeaked out from the playoffs, then I still think that's a successful year and something to build on.
Definitely. All right, so Chicago Bears, it's going to be interesting to watch them next year with Ben Johnson as the head coach. The team that Ben Johnson left to become the Bears head coach is up next year in the Detroit Lions, who lost both their coordinators to head coaching jobs. Ben Johnson now with the Bears, defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn now with the Jets. So 2 new coordinators they have. They have John Morton as the new offensive coordinator, and Kelvin Shepard is the new defensive coordinator, but still a loaded roster for both of them to work with. And, of course, still Dan Campbell coaching on the sidelines, who's one of the best coaches in the NFL, too. The Lions won their second consecutive division title last year in the NFC North. The last time they won a division title before the last 2 years was back in 1993. So it's been a very long time for the Lions since they won a division title. They have not been back-to-back division champs since the 1950s, before the Super Bowl was even invented, really. So it's been a very long time since the Lions were this good right now. They were 15-2 last year. They lost in the divisional round to the Commanders, too. And Dalton, they did a pretty solid job this offseason, too, getting guys with a B- draft grade and a B free agency grade, too. The biggest strength of this team, even without Ben Johnson, is still really a good offense.
Yeah, on paper, they still should be a really explosive offense, right? When you talk about, look, you've got a guy who's played like a top 10 quarterback in Jared Goff for the last 3 years. You've got an explosive pass-catching core with guys like Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. You got arguably the best duo of running backs in football in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You got one of the best tackle duos in football in Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker, right? There's a couple of questions when it comes to, yes, the play calling and then the shuffling on that interior offensive line. They're going to be very young in there, but if they can protect Jared Goff on the inside, at least roughly close to how they've been protecting him, maybe a slight drop-off, but as long as it's not a disaster on the inside, there's no reason this team really shouldn't be still a top 5 or 6 scoring unit in the NFL. You just look at all of the talent they have, especially at the skill positions. There are so few teams in the NFL that can be this explosive on offense, and they're still going to be looking for that to carry them, even though John Morton's calling the plays now. He's got a boatload of talent to work with. He's still got an excellent tackle duo to work with. You know, when he wants to run the football, it's still going to be a balanced unit. So I think you just look at this team and you still go, yes, they lost some pieces, but they're the highest scoring team in the NFL last year in the regular season, right? I mean, they were just explosive week in and week out. They just don't get shut down because they have so much talent and elite talent at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Goff for us is a top 10 quarterback in football. And then you also have our number 2 running back unit in football, a top 5 receiving core in football, and a top 15 offensive line in football too. So yeah, they are loaded offensively even without Ben Johnson there. Defensively, and we saw this kind of be a problem last year when Aiden Hutchinson went down with an injury, the depth in their pass rush was kind of lacking last year because with Aiden Hutchinson, they were the best team in the NFL at getting after the quarterback. Aiden Hutchinson had a 95 pass rush grade by himself through week 6, and then when he went down, the Lions had the 4th worst pass rush grade in the NFL last year. Zadarius Smith, who led the team in pressures when Aiden Hutchinson went down, he was no longer on the team. And then Levi Onwuzurike likely missed all of this year due to injury as well. So Detroit, yes, Hutchinson is back, which is huge because he is like a perennial defensive player of the year candidate when he's healthy. but they're still a little thin at pass rush depth right now.
I believe I saw recently that they are at least talking to Smith about a potential reunion. But no, this pass rush unit, whether they do that or not, they need two things. They need Aiden Hutchinson healthy. They need Aleem McNeil healthy as well. Think about how good Hutchinson was last year, right? First of all, a 38% pass rush win rate, which is just ridiculous.
That would have shattered the record if he held that up.
Shattered it. When you consider anything over 20 elite, and he's at almost 40, that's ridiculous. And the fact that he played 5 games last year, and at the end of the regular season, he was still tied for the team lead in pressures. That's how valuable he is to this defense. And after he got hurt, you could just feel it. You just went, okay, how are they going to rush the passer, right? And there was weeks when Aaron Glenn was coming up with blitz packages and things like that. We saw that in certain weeks. But at the end of the day, when you have an elite pass rusher like this, and then another really good one on the inside in Aleem McNeil, you need those guys healthy. This Lions pass rush just lacks depth. I think Aiden Hutchinson, to me, might be the most suspenseful, important injury return of any player in the league this season because of the way he changes their entire defense.
Definitely. Tell me more about their quarterback, Jared Goff, who now without Ben Johnson, what should we expect from him in another year in Detroit?
Well, this is going to be the question, is that the two big questions about the Lions offense, one, Ben Johnson leaving, and two, the shuffling on the interior offensive line where Graham Glasgow could be moving to center or it could be Tate Ratledge. Are still figuring that out. But then you've got two guys, let's say at guard in Christian Mahogany, who made 2 starts last year. Those are the only 2 starts of his career. And Tate Ratledge is a rookie. Is Jared Goff going to be protected on the inside? Because in structure, he's fantastic. He had the 7th best play action passing grade in the NFL last season. For 3 years, everything has been so incubated and the environment's been so perfect and ideal for Jared Goff. And that's when he succeeds. When he's clean in the pocket back there and he's allowed to just stand there and make reads and make the right throws, especially over the middle of the field, he can be really good. He is a top 10 quarterback when he's allowed to do that. The issue is the play calling going to be a step down from what it was from Ben Johnson? And are you going to get enough interior protection to where he's not disturbed in the pocket? He may be the most statuesque quarterback that we have in a league now where there's less and less of them. So Jared Goff, look, there's going to be questions about his environment around him, but there's no doubt for the last 3 years, he's made just about all the throws that he's needed to make within this system.
Absolutely, yeah. A guy in the interior I'm actually really excited to watch this year is Christian Mahogany, who only played about 140 snaps last year, but he had a 91.5 grade on those snaps. So we'll see if the rookie, it was in his rookie year last year, if in year 2 he can extend that over a full season's worth of snaps too. But I'm excited to see if he could really become a great guard there in Detroit. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is clearly the best offensive player. Or maybe not, with Penei Sewell there too. But Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best receivers in football right now. Arguably the best slot receiver that we have in football. 90 receiving grade for the 3rd consecutive season. He hauled in 68% of his contested targets too. So really 50-50 balls, or more like 70-30 balls with Amon-Ra St. Brown. The only receiver in the league to be in the top 5 in both yards and receiving grade from the slot. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is really the security blanket for Jared Goff and that offense, and he has become a top 5 receiver in the NFL in our opinion.
Boy, if it was 3rd and 8 and I just needed a first down, there's not too many guys I would pick over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, the toughness, the route running, the hands are just ridiculous. You mentioned it, the consistency as well with 3 straight 90 receiving grades. He's as reliable as any receiver in football, and no matter how the plays are being called or what system they have to run, they need to get this guy the ball a lot.
So tell me more about Aiden Hutchinson, who is coming off his injury, obviously, but when he was playing last year, he looked like the runaway favorite for Defensive Player of the Year.
I mean, you look back at, look, he already established himself as one of the best pass rushers in football in 2023 at a 91 pass rush grade. That year, just one of the best, top 10 at least pass rusher in the NFL. Then last year, he comes out his first 5 games, 95 pass rush grade, 45 pressures in 5 games, I believe 8 sacks in that stretch, 38.3% pass rush win rate. For reference, Myles Garrett any given year usually floats between 22 and 25%, right? And that's usually the best mark in football. And Hutchinson being at 38%. Now you can say, okay, he didn't play the greatest tackles in the world those first 5 games, but he did what he was supposed to do against those guys, and he was on his way to having an all-time great season. He was my pick before the year to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he was going to be the clear favorite to do so, and he might have actually been the difference. His injury might have been the difference in the Lions' Super Bowl chances, right? And I know they still would have had to go through Philadelphia, but he's the type of guy that's a difficult assignment for any offensive tackle in the NFL. If he comes back back 100% and is anything close to what he was those first 5 games last year, that may be the biggest addition to any team in football for a team that was just missing that presence last year. Him, again, along with Aleem McNeil on the inside. But Hutchinson, look, I like that they added DJ Reed at corner. I think the young corners are going to get better. You have maybe the best pair of safeties in football, but Aiden Hutchinson is the key to this whole thing as the elite pass rusher that he is. Getting him back is going to be such a welcome return for this defense.
Definitely. And a guy I'm really excited to watch on their offensive line next year is a guy actually, Tate Ratledge, who was their second draft pick, not the first one, because Tyleek Williams was their first-round draft pick. But Tate Ratledge is a guy that they really need next year as either a starter at guard or center. He expected to play center next year with Frank Ragnow obviously retiring. So Tate Ratledge, who played guard at Georgia, will probably be playing center in his rookie year in the NFL. But he was a dominant pass blocker for the Georgia Bulldogs throughout his entire career. He only allowed 2 sacks across his 3 years as a starter for Georgia with an 88 pass blocking grade across those 3 years. That was a top 10 mark in college football across his 3 years. So it's going to be a question mark, him playing center now after playing guard his entire career at Georgia. But regardless, he is an excellent pass blocker, and Jared Goff should be a big fan of him.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it might still be determined whether it's him or Graham Glasgow. One's a guard, one's a center. But either way, you look at, we talked a lot about the defensive line depth and the lack of pass rush depth. Well, there's not a whole lot of offensive line depth either. And I believe it's Miles Frazier, was it a 5th-round pick? He's already suffered an injury as well. So they really need Ratledge, A, to just be durable and in there like he was for Georgia every single week, but B, be productive, right? Because interior pass protection for Jared Goff, it may be more important, I should say, to Jared Goff than any other quarterback in the league. He's not going to move. He's not going to create out of structure. So how quickly can Christian Mahogany adjust to a full-time role starting? How quickly can Tate Ratledge adjust to the NFL? This is going to be maybe the biggest story aside from the 2 coordinators on the entire team is how this interior offensive line gels and protects Jared Goff. Because if that interior protection does break down, then you start to talk about this Lions offense having serious problems in the passing game.
Yeah, they're really relying on 2 youngsters in Ratledge and Christian Mahogany to become really good players after, Ratledge was great in college and so was Mahogany. Mahogany showed some really encouraging signs and flashes as a rookie last year, but they need both those guys to hit the ground running next year if they're going to remain a Super Bowl contender. And the best bet of the year, Dalton, is one I really love from BetMGM. At plus 300, you can get Aiden Hutchinson to win Comeback Player of the Year, not Defensive Player of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year. Ben broke it all down to, like you said, led the NFL in pressures, sacks, and pass rush grade before he got hurt last year. And there's a lot of reports coming out right now that he looks back to normal in training camp. And if he's anything close to what he was last year, he's got a great shot at this award. I mean, he could win Defensive Player of the Year next year. And if he's even a candidate to win Defensive Player of the Year, he's probably a shoo-in to win Comeback Player of the Year.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating race for that award, isn't it? Because if Hutchinson is that dominant, he certainly can win it. But you think about some of the names who could be up for that. You think about Dak Prescott in Dallas, right? You think about Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco if he's healthy for 17 games, right? I mean, you think about what a race that is going to be. But if Hutchinson puts up, not even even if it's not those numbers, anything close to those numbers, or if he is a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL, that is a really good bet to make. Because again, to me, he's the key to this Lions defense. He really is. And I know they have so many other great players, right? Jack Campbell and Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, DJ Reed now on the outside. But Hutchinson makes everything go because the second he got hurt last year, you could feel the pass rush disappear. So I think that's a really fun bet. I think with the number of names and big names that you have that could be candidates for that award, Hutchinson's right up there at the top.
Absolutely.
At the top.
So win total set at 10.5 by DraftKings Sportsbook for Detroit right now after going had a great record last year, obviously going 15-2. But do you think they'll go over or under? Obviously, brand new coordinators there in Detroit. What are your expectations for the Lions in 2025?
I still think they're absolutely talented enough to go over that mark. I've heard a lot of noise lately about people picking big regression and for them to go under. We still got to remember it. I know they're losing both coordinators. This team went 15-2 last year.
Yeah.
And I know they lost to Jaden Daniels, and again, that's a big piece of that is they just did not have any pass rush. And if you don't have pass rush on a guy like Jaden Daniels, that's what's going to happen. But I think they're absolutely talented enough to win this division. They're talented enough to compete near the top of the NFC. there's just going to be a little bit more difficulty. I don't think they're winning 15 again, right? And replacing both coordinators is tough. The bigger one to me that I find fascinating, and I know I'm going to get into this more when it comes to our preview shows during the season, is that you look at this interior offensive line, and you look at a new offensive coordinator, and then you look at the three defenses they're playing in this division. Brian Flores, very blitz heavy. Jeff Hafley, very blitz heavy. Dennis Allen, very blitz heavy, right? There's going to be a lot of different looks in their 6 divisional games. So I really think, it's going to be a story. We'll probably talk about it with all 4 teams, but the head-to-head matchups within this division, with this offensive line, with the new set of coordinators, it's going to be fascinating, right? Especially when you think about Chicago and Ben Johnson being there now and knowing the ins and outs of all those guys. So I do think they're absolutely talented enough to win this division. They're absolutely talented enough to compete for an NFC title or even go to the Super Bowl, right? I think there are big questions, but they should still hit over that 10.5 with the talent that they have on this football team. It's just not going to be quite as easy as it's been the last 2 years.
No, I would say their best chance to win a Super Bowl was the last 2 years, but I still think they'll go over 10.5. I still think this is a playoff team next year. I just don't know if this is as dominant of a team or a true Super Bowl contender like it's been in the last 2 years, but I still think it's a team that could absolutely win the division, make the playoffs, make it maybe into the NFC title game too, but I don't know if I'm picking them to be a true Super Bowl contender in 2025, but it should still be a really good year, even with 2 new coordinators, even with a brand new interior offensive line too. I'm excited to watch Detroit next year, and what's kind of a new era, it feels like, for Lions football in 2025. So that wraps up our preview for the Detroit Lions. Before we move on with the Packers and the Vikings, of course, got to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does success for your child look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. It's all online. Manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Unique gifting lists can be shared with family and friends, so instead of more stuff, they can help grow your child's investments for their future instead. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, next up is the Green Bay Packers, who lost in the wild card round last year after an 11-6 season. So they were in 3rd place in the NFC North, but still made the playoffs because that's how good the division was last year. The Packers had a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense in EPA per play last year. For their draft, we gave them the B-, and for free agency, we gave them a C-. Wasn't the best free agency for the Packers. They had a pretty solid draft to make up for it. Dalton, what is the biggest strength of the 2025 version of the Packers?
So there's so much that gets talked about with this Packers passing game, right? They drafted a first-round receiver for the first time since 2002, and Jordan Love being hurt last year and trying to bounce back. But I think the one constant in the passing game is their pass protection. Max, they were 3rd in the NFL in pass blocking grade last year. And even there's been talks about their offensive line and where's Jordan Morgan going to play, and now Aaron Banks coming in and all of this. But the pass protection is such a constant. In 18 games last year, they only gave up 24 sacks. And the offensive line was only held responsible for 13 of those, right? There's times when Love will hold on to the football. There's times where unblocked blitzers get through and things like that. You look at this pass protection and the chance that it gives the rest of this passing game to operate, it's as good as any team in football, right? This year there's going to be some questions. Obviously, Banks coming in as a new left guard, Elgin Jenkins moving over to center, but you've got some excellent football players up here. And I think the guy to spotlight real quick in that unit is Zach Tom, who you mentioned earlier in the show, 3rd highest graded right tackle in football last year, and just got a big, nice extension that he obviously deserved. He was one of just 2 right tackles to earn an 80-plus grade as a run blocker and a pass blocker last season, him and Lane Johnson. So this offensive line, this pass protection really gives Jordan Love the chance to succeed and hold the football as long as he wants to.
Yeah, Zach Tom, third best grade by a right tackle last year, only behind Penei Sewell and Lane Johnson, who are just, like I said, 2 of the elite tackles that we have in football right now. So they have an elite safety in the secondary, and Xavier McKinney, who's our number 2 safety in the NFL. But the corners are a little more of a question mark right now because you lose Jair Alexander, you lose Eric Stokes too. Carrington Valentine was a solid player for them down the stretch last year. Keyshawn Nixon has had coverage grades kind of in the low 60s in the last 3 years too. You brought in Nate Hobbs, but he only had a 61.5 coverage grade last year too. And then Javon Bullard should play a little bit in the slot like he did in college at Georgia too, but still all around, Dalton, this is a cornerback room that I'm a little worried about. In a division with a lot of elite receivers like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison who gets back from suspension, Amon-Ra St. Brown too, and then obviously DJ Moore and Luther Burden III and everyone else they have there in Chicago, and Roma Dunze, but I'm still worried about what Green Bay is going to do to kind of guard those guys this year.
Yeah, it's really a combination of their pass defense for me, the cornerbacks especially with that lack of experience and depth, and then also their pass rush that struggles to get home without blitzing. I think their pass defense really is the biggest concern for me about Green Bay when you talk about their Super Bowl chances, because you lose Alexander and Stokes, the 2 outside starters. You don't have a lot of veteran experience out there and highly productive experience. Obviously, they're really good at safety with guys like Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams and Javon Bullard playing that combo role, but I'm worried on the outside against the better teams in the NFC. You look at what they're dealing with just in this division, right? Justin Jefferson and those guys in Minnesota, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, all those guys Detroit has. The Bears are loaded now. You look at the Eagles when you have to play A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, the Rams with Nakua and Devontae Adams, and the Falcons with Drake and whoever, the Bucks with Evans and Godwin and all those guys. I mean, when you're playing in this NFC right now with so many teams at the top loaded at receiver, you need a really good group of cornerbacks that can keep up, and I'm a little worried that the Packers might not have that.
Yeah, a little worried about them too. And also Jordan Love, who has been at times looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and at times he's really struggled out there too. It's kind of a roller coaster right now, Dalton. What you know about him going into 2025?
Look, he runs hot and cold, no question. And look, I think, is he absolutely their franchise quarterback? For sure. Is it all his fault that I thought he struggled a bit at times last year? There were times where he was cold. Now, early in the year, he was hurt, but also you had the Packers receivers dropping a lot of balls, and they went from 6th to 16th in receiving grade last year from the year before. I think the big thing for me with Jordan Love is just decision making and not taking so many shots downfield. Don't force it, right? We had a film breakdown of this earlier in the offseason, and there are times when you can see he just forces it. He wants the home run. He wants the big game-changing play, but I think where Matthew Golden, the first-round wide receiver, is going to help more than anything with that blazing speed is allowing Jordan Love to throw in the intermediate parts of the field. He was one of the best quarterbacks in football with that in 2023. Last year, 35th in the NFL in intermediate passing grade out of 43 qualified quarterbacks. I think just stay a little more patient and allow those deep shots to set themselves up within the offense. You've got a great running game with Josh Jacobs. Just move the chains, and then get over the top. And once they have that combination rolling, because they do have a lot of depth at receiver, right? We might not think about they have, a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase, but they have a lot of different pass-catching options. If he just uses them all and makes his read and runs the offense, they can be extremely good. He just has to get back to a little more patient approach.
And you mentioned Josh Jacobs right there. You should help him keep him on schedule a lot in that offense. He's one of the best running backs that we have in football right now. A 91.3 rushing grade last year in Green Bay, in his first year in Green Bay. That was 4th among all running backs in the NFL. If you include the playoffs, he was 3rd in broken tackles and 4th in explosive runs last year. And last year, an 89.2 receiving grade, that was by far his best of his career. It was also 3rd in the NFL too. So Josh Jacobs, in my opinion, is easily a top 5 running back that we have in football right now. And he really helps out that Packers offense where it's not all the pressures on Jordan Love.
Does it feel like he still just doesn't get enough credit, right? Because, I mean, even last year, if the Packers passing game is running hot, people are going to talk about Jordan Love and the receivers. If it's running cold, they're going to talk about Jordan Love and the receivers. And I know that's the nature of playing quarterback. But when you looked at times last year, I think you could argue easily that Josh Jacobs was this team's MVP last year. Think about the games that Jordan Love missed and Malik Willis was playing. And they still had a highly functional run game because Josh Jacobs was the engine engine of it. I think he still needs to continue to be the engine of it. And he added in an 89.2 receiving grade, which he's never done before, and in close to it in his time in the league. So I think you look at Jacobs, again, the spotlight's going to be on the quarterbacks. It's always on the quarterbacks. But if Jacobs is a top 5 back, again, like he was last year, and you have a two-dimensional offense now with the passing game even regressing in a positive way back towards the norm of what they should be, it's incredibly dangerous. But Jacobs, to me, is the engine of it.
So we mentioned before, we're worried about the corners for Green Bay, but it does help out that secondary. They have one of the best center fielders in the NFL playing safety in Xavier McKinney.
Absolutely. Last offseason, when the Packers signed McKinney, and after they hired Jeff Hafley and all the single high defenses, I was screaming this from the rooftops that this was my favorite free agent signing of last offseason. I'm so glad he proved me right. That always feels good. Second in the NFL in coverage grade and interceptions among safeties last year behind Detroit's Kirby Joseph. Highest coverage grade in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. Xavier McKinney is the perfect single high center fielder for this defense. It might sound funny with him being the furthest guy back, but he is the reason that Jeff Hafley can get aggressive, can blitz so much, can even allow his corners to play man-to-man, knowing that they have help over the top, right? So if there's anything that's going to glue this secondary together, it's Xavier McKinney and his ability and his speed to go get the football from anywhere on the field. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL, and he's a perfect fit for this defense. He proved it once already. I think he'll do it again this year.
Yeah, perfect fit for the defense. I think I got a perfect fit for the offense, too, in the first round of the draft in Matthew Golden, who's actually the first wide receiver or even tight end taken in the first round of a draft by the Packers since 2002. It's been over 2 decades since the Packers took a pass catcher in the first round of the draft. He has blazing speed, obviously. Ran like around a 4.3 in the 40-yard dash at the combine. And then his 1 year at Texas after transferring in from Houston, he was 14th in the country with a 99.6 deep receiving grade. And really, the Packers seem to have missed that kind of speed in the receiving core last year. So he could hit home runs for them, but also defenses have to account for him on every single play. That should also open up a lot of holes for their other receivers underneath in the intermediate range.
I think it's huge. I think it's huge. I don't think Golden is in for some type of crazy 1,600-yard season, maybe ever, right? But I think the fact that I believe didn't he hit a 4.29, 4.28, 4.29? Yep. I think he has 4.2 speed. We're talking about what that should do to open everything up for everybody else, because that's what they were missing last year. And for multiple years when Christian Watson has been hurt, he's supposed to be the speed guy, the guy that takes safeties off of the top of the defense. It allows you now to get back underneath, to allow Jaden Reed to be the intermediate route runner that he is, to allow Romeo Doubs to be the intermediate route runner that he is. And the rest of those guys in Dontavian Wicks, all they have to do is catch the football, right? Because that's what they struggled with last year. But Matthew Golden, even if there's a game where he only gets, say, 3 or 4 targets and it doesn't seem like, on the surface he's producing a whole lot individually, the fact that his speed is a constant threat on the field and Jordan Love can go to it anytime should benefit the entire offense.
So the Packers, who have made the playoffs in 5 of the last 6 years, their win total is set at 9.5 right now on DraftKings. Are you going over or under for that? And do you think the Packers will make the playoffs in 6 of the last 7 years now?
I think they should make the playoffs, because you consider it felt like a lot went wrong last year. They still won 11 games, and they still made the playoffs, right? It felt like there was this constant grinding and battling from the Packers, right? I think they should be expected to make the playoffs, and as much as any team in this division, they should be expected to compete for it and try to win this division, right? I think it's so even. I know it feels like I'm saying the same thing for all 4 of these teams here, but again, I think it's the most wide-open division in football, and the Packers, it wouldn't shock me if they finished first. And with the flaws on pass defense, and maybe if the passing game doesn't click again, it wouldn't shock me if they finished 4th. I think there is that level of parity in this division. The one thing that does worry me, whether it's in the regular season or once we get to the postseason and playing those primetime teams, it's their pass defense. They have to be better. They need somebody up front. Rashawn Gary to have his best year. Lucas Van Ness to have his best year. Somebody up front so they can rush 4 and drop more into coverage. And then the cornerback question, right? It's going to be, to me, one-on-one on the outside. Are they going to have a lot of issues? Because we saw this, even if the rest of your defense is great. We saw this in a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. You can have a great pass rush. You can be really good in the middle of your defense. But if you're losing those one-on-one battles outside, teams are going to figure that out, and they're going to get the ball out there outside the numbers and work you on the outside. So I do have my concerns. That pass defense is one thing that might keep me from, say, picking the Packers to go to the Super Bowl, but any outcome in this division would not shock me for them. That includes first place. That includes fourth place. It could go any which way, but they should be expected to have a high floor. They should expect themselves certainly to make the playoffs.
And I think those concerns in the pass defense made Hafley kind of change what he wanted to do defensively last year, because he ran zone coverage at a top 10 rate in the NFL last year. When he was at Boston College, it was all man coverage for them at Boston College. So I think you can't really run man coverage if you don't have the defensive backs to do it, and I don't think he had it last year. So I think he still doesn't really have the great corners to be doing that this year too, but I still think they'll have a winning season. They'll still probably make the playoffs next year too and still compete for that division title. But again, I don't think it's a Super Bowl contender by any means, but I still think it's a very solid team that should make their playoffs for the sixth time in the last 7 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I do like, and I know, again, a lot of the focus is on the passing game, and this is why I was trying to talk about Josh Jacobs. I really like Ben's bet that we have here with Josh Jacobs. He's got Josh Jacobs leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns at 20-1. 20-1, and I know there's Derrick Henry, I know there's Saquon Barkley, but Josh Jacobs is still going to be the workhorse here, right? This Matt LaFleur likes a balanced offense. His best offenses have been balanced. So I think if you do have that two-dimensional game, and especially, here's another part. I'll even say, I've talked a lot about Matthew Golden and the receivers. Matthew Golden taking those safeties out of the box so you can run the ball with Josh Jacobs, I think at 20-1, that's some solid value there for Josh Jacobs to lead the league in rushing touchdowns.
So we project him to have 11.2 rushing touchdowns next year. The only ones who have more than that are Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs.
But Barkley gets all of his stolen on the 1 yard line.
That's true.
He should have a lot more, and he gets all of his stolen.
20-1 is very good value, and this is a team that runs the ball at a top 5 rate in the NFL inside the 10-yard line last year. So yeah, that's a really good bet for Packers at 20-1 for Jacobs to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns. All right, final team preview we got here today is the Minnesota Vikings, who were amazing last year with a 14-3 record. Unfortunately, that ended in the wild card round immediately to the Rams, but it was a fantastic year last year for the Minnesota Vikings. Sam Darnold kind of came out of nowhere and was an outstanding quarterback for them with J.J. McCarthy going down with an injury. The defense had the 4th best EPA per play in the entire NFL last year too, so a terrific year for the Vikings. And yes, they finished in second place in the NFC North, but they still went 14-3. It was just that incredible of a division last year. We gave their draft a C- for the Vikings and gave their free agency an A+. So wasn't a great draft for the Vikings, but it was an outstanding free agency for Minnesota as well. What is the biggest strength for Minnesota, Dalton, in 2025?
I mean, part of the reason you wonder, okay, why was Sam Darnold so good last year, right? And why has Kevin O'Connell been able to produce with any quarterback that he's had over the last couple of seasons is that their supporting cast is just ridiculous, and it's only getting better. You talk about Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in football. Jordan Addison, a really good number 2, although he'll be suspended the first 3 games of the year. T.J. Hawkinson's a really good tight end. Jalen Naylor is the 3rd guy. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason in the backfield, I think, is a really good pair. And then you look at what they've done. They already had one of the best tackle duos in football. It's a little bit like the Bears, where they overhauled their entire interior offensive line. 1st-round pick Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State, and then Ryan Kelly and Will Fries coming over both from the Colts at center at right guard. You look at the supporting cast, the environment that J.J. McCarthy is coming into, that Sam Darnold played with last year, that Kevin O'Connell has been building over the last couple of seasons. That's the biggest reason for hope, right? If there's going to be a young first-year starting quarterback coming in, he couldn't be incubated any better than he is with the coach, the play calling, and then the supporting cast that he has on the field. This offense, if McCarthy hits, could be fantastic.
Yeah, and you're hoping he hits, right? Because he's kind of an unproven quarterback right now. That's kind of the biggest question mark, I will say. It's not really a weakness for this team right now, but the biggest question mark is J.J. McCarthy's only played in 1 preseason game so far. Then obviously got hurt and missed all of his rookie year after that. So Kevin O'Connell really helped out Sam Darnold last year with a lot of play action passes last year. Should be the same in 2025, J.J. McCarthy. So I have faith in McCarthy as a former first-round pick for the Vikings. But there's always just the question mark, okay, can he hit the ground running in what is essentially his rookie year this year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think something, we went over this earlier in the offseason with a film breakdown as well, is that O'Connell is going to use concepts and he's going to do things that McCarthy is familiar with from his time at Michigan, especially the play-action heavy schemes. And Sam Darnold, when you look at the difference between him play-action and non-play-action, he was one of the best play-action passers in the league last year. So I think it's going to be the same type of formula where, yes, this is an offense that finds ways to get guys open at a higher rate than anybody else. They're excellent when it comes to the first 15 plays and the first quarter and scoring in the first quarter, right? That helps the quarterback, those scripted plays. They have an excellent supporting cast. Everything as far as environmentally is there for McCarthy to succeed. Do I think he's going to come in and be one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football? I don't, but I do think he has every reason to come in and do his job and be solid. All he has to do is make the throws and run the system the way it should be run, because we've seen it not just from Kirk Cousins, but now from Sam Darnold, from Josh Dobbs. I mean, guys like Nick Mullins out there throwing for 350, 400 under Kevin O'Connell. He just has a feel for how to run this offense, and McCarthy just needs to go in there and do his job and play his part.
We have them as a top 10 receiving core and a top 10 offensive line in the NFL going into next year. So yeah, outstanding supporting cast, and a big reason why the Vikings have a top 10 receiving core is because they have Justin Jefferson, who is arguably the best receiver in the NFL right now. Over the last 5 years, so it was really his first 5 years in the NFL, 93.6 receiving grade, and he has a 2.64 WAR, which is the best among all receivers. 88 receiving grade last year was a career low for him. Usually an 88 is like one of the best in the NFL. That was a career low for Justin Jefferson. So he is outstanding. He's easily a top 2 or 3 receiver in the NFL. You can make a great argument he's number 1, 2, and yes, a brand new quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, but when you're throwing a number 18 out there, you're set up to succeed.
I mean, 5 years in and on his way to being one of the all-time greats, really, as long as it feels like even if they don't fully figure out this quarterback situation and he never plays with an elite quarterback, he is just unbelievably consistent. You mentioned it. When an 88 receiving grade through 5 years is the lowest one you have, I mean, you're on your way to just doing special things in your career. Justin Jefferson, look at JJ, if there's one bit of advice we have, when in doubt, throw it to number 18. He's going to find a way to get open and haul it in. I mean, he's just one of the most consistently elite players we have in the league.
Just for reference, an 88 receiving grade that he had last year was still 8th in the NFL. So still a top 10 receiver.
And
that was worse.
And that was the lowest he's had.
Yeah, that was by far his worst season. And he was still in a top 10 receiver easily in the NFL too. Dalton, who was the star defensive player for the Vikings?
You know, one of the more interesting set of transactions last year in free agency was Danielle Hunter going from Minnesota to Houston, and Jonathan Grenard going from Houston to Minnesota. And I would argue that Hunter was obviously more proven than Grenard was throughout his career, but Grenard comes over as that traditional 4-3 defensive end, and he was just spectacular last year. If you include the postseason, he had 84 pressures. The only 2 players that had more, including playoffs, was Jared Verse and Chris Jones on the inside. The 3rd most pressures of any defensive lineman in the NFL, a 90.8 true pass rushing grade. So in obvious pass rushing situations, right? Brian Flores didn't have to blitz. He's a heavy blitzer, but he didn't have to blitz all the time because he had Grenard up front. That 90.8 true pass rush grade, the 6th best among edge defenders in the NFL. Very quietly, I think one of the best edge players in the league last year, and a great deal when you considering what they're paying him compared to what a lot of the top guys get now in that $35 to $40 million range. Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, don't forget Dallas Turner, their 1st-round pick last year. This is a dangerous edge group that if Brian Flores does any given day want to drop back in coverage and just let them pin their ears back, he can do that. He's got a lot of options, but it starts to me with Grenard and all of the pressure that he generates.
Yeah, and I can't wait to watch, obviously, him on that defensive line. And a guy you go against in practice a good amount is Donovan Jackson, the rookie to watch here, who is kind of a surprising pick in the 1st round, considering everyone thought the Vikings offensive line was already really good, and they got another great player in Donovan Jackson there. He was Donovan Jackson was the only top 100 pick they had in the NFL draft, so not a lot of picks they made in the NFL draft, but he's a very, very good player at Ohio State. So he played left tackle a little bit for Ohio State last year, even though he's mostly a guard in his career because of injuries last year. Josh Simmons made him play offensive tackle, and he was one of the biggest reasons why Ohio State won the national title last year, because he brought stability to that offensive line that really needed it. He only allowed 2 sacks all of last season, and those 2 were against Abdul Carter, number 3 overall pick, and what was Donovan Jackson's first game playing left tackle. So it was incredible to watch him kind of be that elite player at left tackle for them last year after being an elite left guard for them too. And he's probably going to play guard for the Vikings, but he has a tackle flexibility that if Darisaw goes down with an injury or Brian O'Neill goes down with an injury too, he could step in and fill in the shoes at tackle too. But Donovan Jackson, big fan of his game, and he's a big reason why the Vikings have one of the best offensive lines in the league.
It's a great call too with Christian Darisaw coming back from the knee injury. That's one of the biggest factors this year for their offense. I mean, he's one of the best left tackles in football. But if for any reason he was late coming back or if he aggravated something, you could reasonably move Jackson out there if you needed to. But no, I think, and they tried to trade out of that spot, that number 24 spot, because it was their only top 100 pick. But if you're not able to trade out of it, then get yourself a solid starter. I think, maybe we thought it was a little high for Jackson, but if you're going to get a bona fide starter, I think that's what we both believe Donovan Jackson is going to be. And I think, you fill out that last spot. They already got Will Fries and Ryan Kelly in free agency. You've got the tackle duo. Fill out that fifth spot in the offensive line. The interior had been a problem for Minnesota for several years. And my favorite, actually, you mentioned part of it there, my favorite Jackson stat from the last 2 years. He's given up 3 sacks the last 2 years, right? 2 of them were to Abdul Carter while he was playing left tackle. And the third one from 2023 was against Mason Graham.
Yeah, fair enough.
These are the types of players that you needed to win against Donovan Jackson while he was at Ohio State. So if nothing else, I mean, you drafted, I think, a very stable presence who's going to go in there and fit right in.
So the Vikings, their best bet of the year, according to Ben Lindsay on DraftKings, is to make the playoffs at only minus 110 right now. So a team that went 14-3 last year is minus 110 to just make the playoffs in 2025. So yeah, McCarthy is an unknown right now, but very talented roster, was a rising star at head coach, it feels like, and Kevin O'Connell is quickly becoming one of the best head coaches in the NFL. Like I said, a 14-win season last year. They really helped out the trenches on both sides this year, too, in the offseason. I like that bet a lot for Minnesota. It's only minus 110 to make the playoffs after winning 14 games last year.
I mean, if you're in on that bet, let's make it simple, right? They won 14 games last year. Do we feel like they're one of the 7 most talented teams in the NFC? I would say so. The quarterback is the big question. And anytime quarterback's your big question, that's a thing. But last year, quarterback was their big question. They won 14 games with Sam Darnold. If you believe J.J. McCarthy can play something close, near how Sam Darnold played last year and just do his job within this system and allow the rest of the playmakers to do what they do, then you believe the Vikings can make the playoffs. You don't even have to pick them to win the division. You talk about them being just one of the 7 best out of the 16 in the NFC. I mean, you just chalk it up right now. I think they're better than Dallas. I think they're better than New York. Right now, I'd still put them ahead of the Bears until the Bears prove something, right? Then you have Saints and Panthers. That's already 5. And then there's a couple of teams. I would take them over Seattle. You really get to... There's a lot of outcomes here where this could happen. All they have to do is be one of the 7 best there. Even if they don't win this division, I absolutely think they can do that as long as McCarthy does his job. He doesn't have to be a top 5 quarterback. He may not even need to be a top 10 quarterback. Darnold last year was somewhere between, let's say, the 10th and 13th best quarterback in the league. If McCarthy's even top 16 or 17, this team could make the playoffs. So
it ties right into the bottom line because their over-under is 9.5 right now. And I'll say right now, I'm going over because you look at what Kevin O'Connell's done in his 3 years as a Vikings head coach. Year 1, 13-4, won the NFC North. Year 2, they went 7-10, but Kirk Cousins missed 9 games that year with a torn Achilles. So obviously, Josh Dobbs playing quarterback for a lot of the games last year. It's understandable why they went 7-10 that year. But then this past year, 14-3, right? So in 2 of the 3 years, they've had 13 wins or more. So I think it's certainly feasible they're going to do that again in 2025, or at least win 10 or 11 games in 2025. I think over 9.5 is a bet I'm absolutely making.
I mean, it just goes to show you the depth that you have in this division. When the team that won 5 games last year and is still projected to finish last has an over/under of 8.5, right? That's
9.5.
The Bears are at 9.5.
No, the
Vikings now are at 9.5.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The Bears are 8.5.
Right,
yes,
but it just shows you that, I mean, that means the books think there's a legitimate chance that all 4 of these teams could finish with a winning record this year. So if that's the case, then yes, it's the best division in football. Again, it's the most wide-open division. The Vikings, would it shock me at all if they were first? Absolutely not. Look at the amount of talent they have. Would it shock me at all in this division if they were in 4th place? Not at all, because you maybe them more than anybody, along maybe with the Bears, you question their quarterback situation, right? This division might be the most fun to watch in the entire league because you just don't know which way this is going. I think there's a road for all 4 teams to win it. It's going to be extremely competitive. The head-to-head matchups are going to be so much. I just can't wait for it to watch these 4 teams play football, especially if the Bears have made up that gap towards the other 3 teams. It's going to be ridiculous. But the Vikings, absolutely, as long as McCarthy doesn't completely falter this season in his first year as a starter, they should absolutely be in a playoff race and in the division race.
Yeah, if he's not, if he really struggles next year, then yeah, they could miss the playoffs and maybe go below 500. But I don't see that happening with the supporting cast they have there, and Kevin O'Connell's a play caller too. I think they'll go over 9.5 and win 10 or 11 games, maybe more than that, and be once again one of the top teams in the NFC.
Here's a question. Here's the fun. Maybe Ben's got to search this for us. Is there a bet out there somewhere with odds that all 4 of these teams make the playoffs?
Ooh.
I would want to know what that if and what that looks like. Now, I know it would take some real mathematical stuff to happen there, obviously, especially in the East with both Philly and Washington, and out West with some of the teams they have out there. But is there? I wonder if there's a bet out there that has some sort of odds.
Hold on. Maybe I can get props in that real quick. Maybe I could do a parlay and see what the odds would be on that.
Oh, okay. You could build that. Okay, you could build it. That makes sense. All 4 teams to make the playoffs. I wonder what that would look like.
That'd be interesting. I think it's certainly possible. I think it'd be hard. It would be very hard considering that they all play each other and would all beat up on each other. But I do think that all 4 teams have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs next year. I think it's the best division in football right now. You can get basically all 4 for plus 1230 would be the odds.
Plus 1230. That's actually not.
That's not as much.
Not be as. That's. I don't think that's as long as I thought. Right, a little over 12 to 1. I don't think that's as high as I thought it would be.
No,
that's interesting. Just with the math that goes into that, with you would then you're sitting there talking about Washington has to miss the playoffs. You're only getting 1 out west of let's say San Fran and Arizona miss out, Atlanta, whoever else. I mean, it would certainly take a lot of the math to start mathing there. But I was just curious on the odds. I'm like, because we have yet to have that in this format.
Yeah, never happened.
To have all 4 have it. You wonder if there is just a minuscule case for that to happen with this.
So because I guess the Lions are minus 185, the Packers are minus 135, the Vikings are minus 110, the Bears are plus 160. So the worst team in the division is the Bears at plus 160, which is still like almost even odds.
That's insane. That's probably still maybe 9th or 10th in the NFC. I would guess. I mean, it just shows you again the potential of all 4 of these teams.
It's crazy. Yeah. So the NFC North, arguably the best division in football. That wraps up our preview for all 4 teams in the NFC North. We'll remind you guys, the PFF sale is going on right now. The early bird sale, it ends today. This is the final day of that early bird sale. Get it 33% off, $40 off your annual subscription at subscribe.pff.com and use the code earlybird. Also, the link is in the description below if you guys want to do that too. Again, today is the final day of this sale, so take advantage of it right now. Next week, we're doing the AFC South and the NFC South in those team previews. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss every single preview for every single NFL team leading up to the 2025 season. For Dalton Wasserman, for our producers back there, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Monday with our full preview of the AFC South.